Nigel reo-coker, initial reaction before we start to get stuck into ties. The draw was a pretty sexy one.
It's a great draw. I think there are some great fixtures in there, but obviously everyone will be looking at the Liverpool Real Madrid, a replay of last year's final, and obviously PSG Bayern. And I think I'm not saying PSG Bayern just for the sake of, oh, it's PSG, everyone's talking about them, but right now it's to see really how far and serious contenders PSG are for winning their first ever Champions League. And I think this is one of the real tests they're actually going to get. So now we're going to see how much of a good team this Paris Saint-Germain is, and obviously to face the perfect Bayern, because they were perfect in the group stages and the ever evolving and getting better by every game Bayern. This is where we're going to see how serious contenders PSG are.
James?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's intriguing, maybe we should sort of address the elephant in the room right away before talking around it. That with the World Cup coming, I feel like for a lot of PSG's big names, that carries almost more importance than anything that happens in the Champions League, especially of course Lionel Messi. You know what's missing. I think the same is true for Neymar as well. What's missing from their resume as a player? Well, it's not the Champions League trophies. It's not, in Messi's case, it isn't the Ballon d'Ors. It's the World Cup. And we'll come on to talk about in the weeks to come, Argentina and Brazil and their chances. I think both will be making a deep run. I can certainly imagine that if a team like Argentina wins the World Cup, that might almost be it for Messi. It wouldn't be unimaginable that he retires on the spot, Gerard Piqué style. But I mean, that's one side of it. The other thing, and I come on here and I say this a lot, how much faith do you have that when Bayern have 10, 15 minutes of possession, that PSG's front three will be doing something to close it down, to stop that building? Compare that to Bayern's attack. Julian Nagelsmann can sometimes overcomplicate things, it's fair to say. But I know that when PSG have the ball and are trying to build their attacks, they're going to have to find a way around the pressure of Mane, Sane, Musiala, Gnabry. I feel like at the moment, Bayern have that more cohesive team mentality, and that's what normally wins them. Of course, we saw like last time these two met, that in the end, PSG probably weren't the better team, but they had Kylian Mbappe. So that's where we're at, really.
Listen, I think when you look at this tie in particular, we're going to find out whether there's something right or wrong with Bayern Munich, because you got to be tested against the best to lift this trophy again. Now, are Bayern Munich one of the favourites? Absolutely, they're one of the favourites. Rafa come in with a comment right here. Ian, there's something not quite right with Bayern or PSG. And here's the thing. I go into this tie looking at Bayern Munich getting through the group stage, but I still watch them week in and week out in the Bundesliga, and I'm still telling you, they're not themselves just yet. They were terrific in the group stage and proved me wrong. Absolutely. I thought they would struggle to get out of the group. That's a crazy comment. It was wild. It was bizarre. However, they're through the group. They look great. Now I want to see if they'll be really tested against Paris Saint-Germain. Where I see the weakness in this Bayern Munich side is defensively. They concede goals, and they always seem to give the opposition an opportunity to score goals against them. Paris Saint-Germain have to be at their best to beat Bayern Munich, full stop. And do you stop? And how do you stop this Bayern Munich? Because now they're starting to show consistency with the goal scoring coming from multiple areas. It's not just a Mane who's scoring the goals. They're scoring them from multiple positions. But PSG is a completely different animal that you're coming up against. So it's really crazy. Go ahead, Nigel. You got a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say then, so who would you say has the weaker defense? Because obviously it's the battle of the weak defenses. So between Bayern and PSG, who do you think has the weaker defense?
Listen, it's probably going to be whoever has the weakest defense goes out, or who has the most explosive. You can't compete, in my personal opinion, you cannot compare what Paris Saint-Germain have with Bayern Munich. Paris Saint-Germain's offense is the scariest up there in Europe right now. And if they're on form, there's no way Bayern Munich can stop them from scoring goals. So Bayern have to score goals, Nigel. They can't just sit back, because PSG will score against Bayern. No doubt. They'll score multiple goals. But can Bayern Munich score 3 and 4 goals against Paris Saint-Germain? JJ's probably saying, yes, they can score 3 or 4 goals against this PSG side. But that would be the one for me that who scores more goals? I mean, defensively, both of them have been suspect, and probably that's one of the reasons why they might not win this version of the Champions League. Or is this the test? You go through a good World Cup, you have a quick winter break, and we talked about this, the winter break. Bayern Munich have players going to the World Cup. Almost most of their players will go to the World Cup. They have a 2-month break from the Bundesliga. 2-month break. They don't play again until the 20th of January. And I think Bayern's the first game back against Leipzig on the 20th of January. That is a ridiculous break for any club to have, and for these players to have such a break, it's absolutely phenomenal. I'm excited to see what Bayern can do against PSG because I want to see them tested against the best. And JJ, if you're ready to rock and roll to have a comment on this one, my opinion, PSG are a slight favourite.
I mean, I think PSG, given the way that they started the season, the fact that they're one of, I think, two European teams unbeaten at this moment in time, assuming that Benfica didn't lose last night, I think it certainly bodes slightly in their favor, but Bayern, there's no way that it's an easy draw. I know we've debated Bayern loads since the beginning of the season. They looked a bit shaky, and now they've really come into their own, really been impressive in the Champions League. I definitely agree with what you were saying, Ian. PSG will fancy their chances up against that defense. I know that I'm harsh on that, sort of majority French backline, but I really think that PSG, assuming that Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe all come through the World Cup unscathed, will fancy their chances going up against them. You've got, the argument as well, I guess, that Bayern might take a bit longer to remobilize given how long that break is, and the fact that a lot of those players will go away from the World Cup, however that pans out for Germany and other countries concerned, and then come back to it and perhaps take a little while longer to get back into the swing of things. Or, they could be a lot fresher than PSG. PSG could be running on fumes, and we could see Bayern, really, really tear into PSG. We don't know, how that's going to play out. But given everything that's gone on over the last couple of years, it's developed into quite a nice rivalry now, because you've got that final back in 2020 where Bayern ran out 1-goal winners. Then you had the quarterfinals where PSG just about triumphed over Bayern and got to the semis before being knocked out by Manchester City. So there's a little bit of needle now developing between those two teams. And I'm not going to say it's going to be a full-blown, rivalry like sort of PSG-Barca became a couple of years ago, but it's kind of going that way, and I think it's quite a nice match, and it's certainly shaping up to be two really, really good games. The only thing I would say is that PSG haven't shown so far, and we don't know how that's going to change under Galtier, that they can play focused football for 180 minutes over two legs, and that's going to be key against a team like Bayern, because we saw they came very close to doing it against Real last season. Sort of took their foot off the gas for the final half an hour, got punished, knocked out. If they do that against Bayern, the same thing will happen. So whether or not Christophe Galtier can stamp out some of those mistakes from the past, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. But it is a really, really fascinating tie. And personally, I'm always of the opinion that PSG don't really need an easy draw, or shouldn't rely on getting an easy draw to make it further in the tournament. The amount of talk that gets dedicated to them, potentially being Champions League winners, they have to walk the walk at some point and come up against these bigger sides. And I actually think it benefits them, especially in a season like this where they're not pulling away, but they're fairly comfortable at the top of Ligue 1 at this moment in time. They'll need a challenge at the beginning of next year. And I think that Bayern is the right kind of challenge. It's not a team that's, completely infallible, but also at the same time, it is a team that could cause PSG some problems if PSG are not 100% focused.
Go on, Nigel.
No, I just want to add quickly, to be fair, what James said as well. And I think James is right. Like, we haven't really taken into consideration the World Cup and the burden that's on Messi and Neymar. I think that's going to play a part.
Right.
The burden of the World Cup, of what happens, whoever wins that, whether it's Brazil, Argentina, whether they both don't win it, with the pressure they're going to face back home, the criticism, then you coming into a restart of basically the Champions League, which is something no one's ever used to seeing. And also, again, we talk about Bayern having a longer break, which is going to benefit them. I think it's a great matchup. And I just think, for me personally, it's going to see how serious this Paris Saint-Germain is, and whether really money can truly buy you the Champions League. You've got three of the best attacking force in the world football, but are they all going to be right mentally after a World Cup during a winter break to be able to go in to think about trying to win the Champions League? Or is there going to be too much of a heavy burden still being carried from the World Cup halfway through a domestic season, when normally World Cup's in the summer, you have extra holiday off to get over it, you get into preseason, you get into the regular routine of the start of the season, which takes everything away. But now you're going to be carrying that burden on you if you're not successful. And we've already seen links with Messi maybe going back to Barcelona and all these other different things. So all of these things are going to play a part.
James?
Not very much more to say, really. I think we've kind of hit this in good depth. But as to Nigel's question, are PSG a serious team? To quote our friend and colleague Tosin, they're an unserious team. They can be relied upon to be daft. And I think that's why, there is that thing like until they show me otherwise, I don't trust them in the big moments. I don't trust, and I think it's something that echoes around the club. It was there before, it was there before Messi came, and I fear, frankly, it'll be there after. This is a team that I just don't believe in the biggest moments because the one consistent factor of the last decade is they failed to deliver. People kind of forget they were quite bad in that Champions League final they lost. They go deep, but they never really ever have looked to me like serious winners.